Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national television channel Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and important foreign policy developments around the globe that have an impact on India's rise. Viewers, in this episode, we are looking at a seminal relationship that is redefining world politics, the so-called no limits strategic partnership between Russia and China. Russia and China are getting closer together and coordinating more on the world stage, and this has huge repercussions and ramifications for India, for the Western world, and even for the global South. So we are going to be looking at what the Russia-China partnership or near alliance-like relationship, what does it mean for the world, and how should the world respond to it. And to discuss this, let me introduce you to two very knowledgeable observers on this subject and on international affairs in general. With me is Nishtha Gautam, a well-known foreign affairs journalist and author and academic. Nishtha ji, welcome to Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you so much.
And also with me is Shubhangi Sharma, who is with the News 18 network and follows the foreign affairs beat very closely and is a columnist. Welcome, Shubhangi ji.
Thank you.
So to start with, Nishtha ji, Russia-China is a big relationship. These are two neighbors which share a direct border and have a long history going back in time since the founding of the communist republics in both countries, and even before that from imperial and czarist times. But today, President Vladimir Putin and President Xi Jinping at this current juncture in history are saying that their relationship has reached the highest level ever, and that this is some kind of a game-changing formation that is rearranging the world order. I mean, that's the kind of rhetoric we are seeing in Beijing and in Moscow. So if you could start by reflecting on why they have gotten so close in your view, and what is it that the glue that binds these two together, and what do you think is the main factor propelling this no limits friendship?
Well, I would like to add a qualifier here that whenever anybody claims that they are in a no limits friendship or alliance or a partnership or a relationship,
We have to understand, to take it with a pinch of salt, because there is always a limit to that partnership or relationship. And we have to see this visit, President Putin's visit to China, in the context of Blinken's visit as well. And
the US Secretary of
the
State,
US
yeah.
Secretary of State, who just concluded his China visit and stated a few things that may be unsavory in both the capitals, in Moscow as well as in Beijing. And there is, as you rightly said, that this partnership is actually a game-changing partnership, and it has repercussions for not just the region, in both, region for both Russia and China, but has global repercussions. And we have to understand that these two countries are actually trying to create a world order which moves away from Brussels and Washington, D.C. And this is what this strategic and cultural and at a level of very personal partnership seeks to attempt a move away from the world order, which has been dominated by Europe and America. And when it comes to the two leaders, President Putin and Xi Jinping, we have to understand that these are two strong men. And I dare say that they are actually playing a very, very interesting game here, which is, which we sometimes thought that North Korea was playing, which was the crazy, fearsome cripple gambit. Leave aside cripple, because neither country is crippled in any sense of the term. They are both very strong countries, but the image that the leaders have created for themselves, or at least how they are perceived by the West or by global South, is that this crazy, fearsome leadership, and the unpredictability of their actions is what they thrive on. And this is what brings the two countries, the two capitals, and the two governments together.
Yeah, and if I can bring in Shubhangi ji as well. Shubhangi ji, Nishtha ji was just saying that the ultimate purpose is to change the world order. That's what Russia and China are after. That is their long-term goals. And she also used the word strong men. And increasingly, this grouping or this pairing has been seen as the kind of like a, the fulcrum of an authoritarian axis. She already mentioned North Korea, and then people add Iran as well. And then they say there is the China, Russia, North Korea, Iran axis, and that all of them have grievances and grudges with the US, especially to a lesser extent with Europe, and they are out to reorder the world in their favor or in the favor of authoritarianism in general. I mean, that's how the liberal Western media often portrays this, that this is also some kind of an ideological alliance over and above pragmatic interests. But there are a lot of pragmatic interests, right? And if you could throw some light on what Russia wants from China. I mean, Russia is clearly the weaker and the more dependent party in this relationship. It's an asymmetric one. So if you could reflect on that, that is helpful for us to understand why Russia is going so headlong into this Chinese embrace.
So for Putin, doing business has become a huge priority, and also running the war machine in Russia. So there is a huge dependence also on China for a lot of material, a lot of dual use technology, a lot of chips coming from Hong Kong and China that help, the war machine at the end in Russia. So if Ukraine, which we see it's taking that direction, it's going towards kind of an attritional warfare situation, and it's going to be quite prolonged from here as well. To sustain that war effort, it is quite important for Putin to maintain very steady and strong ties with China, ensure supplies, ensure diplomatic support, and also together they do a very good job with the propaganda. So at this point, if you notice, Russia has been quite comfortable leveraging China's economic heft, China's diplomatic heft in its favor, and speaking up against the West. So I think together they've been trying to also rope India in. So whenever India has one of these verbal battles, Russia tries to come in between. It tries to sort of have. Recently, they just tried to say that the West is interfering in India's elections. So essentially, they want to create this larger Eurasian bloc that is, ideologically together, at least in terms of being anti-West.
Yeah,
so that
they
is
used to call it the RIC grouping, and still there. But I'll come to India in a bit. But back to Nishtha ji. So yes, Russia is more and more dependent on China. It's quite clear it's an unequal relationship, and all those microelectronics and drone engines and optics and all kinds of intermediate goods. I think China is now supplying Russia and keeping its war effort going. But on the other hand, you had mentioned, Nishtha ji, about Antony Blinken's pressure on China, and the American messaging has been that if you support the Russians more, then there are going to be consequences, and we are going to use trade measures and other sanctions to try and punish and try and further curtail the China-US economic relationship, which is massive, right? Viewers, just for clarification, Russia-US is almost negligible, but China-US is a huge economic relationship. And on that front, Nishtha ji, if you are Xi Jinping, and you are receiving Vladimir Putin with open arms, and you are declaring, sky is the limit. But on the other hand, you will be watchful that your economy is slowing down, and you do need continued trade and investment with the West and access to technology with the West. China has not given up on those things. China is not, it's in the long race, right? China doesn't do suicidal things just for short-term gain. And so they have this longer-term vision. So if you're Xi Jinping, wouldn't you have this in the back of your mind about how much you should give to Russia, how much you should deal with Russia? Because the other side is they want to also keep the doors open to the Western countries?
Absolutely, and I think the Chinese establishment has been quite aware of the challenges that this growing partnership may entail, and it has already entailed, because Antony Blinken was very clear that this has got to stop, and the latest sanctions against
trade tariffs and all that.
Yes, the trade tariffs, and also the Hong Kong based banks and China banks. I mean, there is clear hostility there, and Blinken was mincing no words that it was a direct outcome of China's continued support to Russia's war against Ukraine. But we also have to understand, and you have hinted at that China is like this horse with huge stamina, which is there for the long race, and it is there to win. And the kind of strides that China has made in the last 2 decades are for everybody to see. It is very fashionable to sort of write China off. Oh, the economy is slowing down. Yes, economy is slowing down because the stellar, the almost meteoric rise that China's economy had in the past 2 decades. Of course, it's got to slow down, but we cannot write China off. And United States is also conscious of that, because if there is Chinese dependency on the US know-how and everything else, US is also dependent on China. China is also a very important market, as well as a good sourcing ground.
Yeah, if you ask Elon Musk, he will swear by China any day.
I was going to that. I was going to actually quote Elon Musk and his love for China, but that's another story altogether. It's a maverick we are talking about. But when it comes to this limit that I mentioned in my opening remarks, that there has to be an understanding of what these limits might be for China. They are very clear that they are not a supplier of arms to Russia in any way. Their support is actually limited to technology, some chips, and things that Russia is not really going to miss if Xi Jinping were going to stop it and say, hey, bro, I have to stop it because things are getting hot for me as well. And these two actually share this kind of relationship, that optics and substance, they go hand in hand.
Optics and substance. And of course, talking of optics, it's also to show the world, Shubhangi, isn't it, that there is an alternative. And from their point of view, a lot of developing countries, both the Russians and the Chinese, say the global South is extremely upset with the Western hegemony and Western interventions and Western policies and hypocrisy. And so they have also been, pitching the merits of a post-Western or a non-Western world order to the developing countries, and often they are on the same question. For example, we already spoke about the Ukraine war and how China is involved, but there's also, for example, the Israel-Hamas war, and on that also the Russians and the Chinese have lined up on the Palestinian side in a very, very clear way. It's meaning not even an effort to strike a balance. They're very, very critical of Israel and what Israel has done in the last several months of fighting in Gaza. And on so many other questions, in Africa, many parts you find that Russian and the Chinese, they both have a similar propaganda claiming that Western policies failed, and that there must be a shift, and that the developing countries should move away from dependence on Western military or economic or other forms of assistance. Instead, they should take the Chinese or the Russian. So if you look at the bigger picture, of the developing world, do you think this is a very convincing argument for Russia and China to say we are the alternative? I mean, Russia doesn't have the kind of resources that China has, But in some countries, especially in Africa and in West Asia or the Middle East, they have also intervened forcefully, and they also have assets there, and they have got economic interest there. So some of the developing world probably even buys this argument that at least these two, China and Russia, don't have any hypocrisy, and because there's a lot of pent up frustration about the failed Western policies.
Definitely, they are projecting themselves as an ideological alternative, as an economic alternative, and overall leadership. They're basically pushing for themselves to take the helm of the world order, but obviously it's a lot of propaganda, it is a lot of rhetoric involved. We are seeing in some payments the yuan replacing the dollar, but these payments directly involve China or Russia in many ways. So it is not as if the US dollar is really going anywhere at this point. But definitely because of the sheer volumes that China deals in, it is quite a threat. So there is potential that they're basically showing to the global south. They're marketing a new idea. I'm not sure how much the global south would be interested in that particular model that is being pushed by the Chinese at this point, other than the only dimension that is standing up to the West. So as long as there is this hypocrisy, as we speak a lot of times, from the West. So the West tends to be very overbearing a lot of times on many global south countries, and we in India know about that very well. I don't believe that China commands the type of soft power, or it does not have such. It is getting there, but its diplomatic relations are not that evolved with the world that it would be able to command the decisions that they make, or the shifts that they take, and their foreign policy in the way that the West still does at this point.
Yeah.
And so of course, there's also the banking system, which again the Chinese themselves are quite intertwined in the Western banking system. So I don't think it's quite rhetorical. It's a lot of propaganda.
Right.
May I come in
please,
here?
yes, please.
So it's very interesting, and the observations that Shubhangi has made are absolutely valid. But there is always this thing about the failures of say China and Russia, the non-Western challengers, and and the reigning sort of powers, the US and Europe. UK, of course, has got its own problems now. We have to understand that when it comes to some of the biggest failures that we like to put on the list in the Chinese column, the biggest is the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the CPEC, the corridor, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's run into a lot of problems, and but we also have to understand that there is an initiative called IMEC, the India, Middle East and Europe corridor. That has also run into troubles. So when it comes to this war of propaganda and this war of optics, I think both the West and China, Russia, Iran, they're all playing the same game. That we are the good guys, the other parties are not, and Afghanistan.
When the case is nobody is perfect, or nobody necessarily has the model.
Look at what the United States did in Afghanistan. In fact, one could argue that the United States and Europe, the NATO, the interventions that they have made in the Middle East, West Asia, and in Afghanistan, they have been rather disastrous. Not just for the geopolitics, but also for the economy of all the countries concerned, and have impacted domestic policies in those countries.
That's true. So yeah, I mean, like you're saying, this is actually a rhetorical war where nobody really has the solution for the global south, but then they're all pretending to have it, and it's a kind of a race or a one-upmanship game. Coming to India now, Shubhangi ji, obviously Russia remains a major strategic partner for us. Through over decades we have sustained this strategic partnership, and we call it a privileged strategic partnership, and it has stood the test of times, and even after the Ukraine war and the tightening of China-Russia no limits friendship, Russia has not denied us anything we have asked them. So to that extent, they remain autonomous and have not bowed under any potential Chinese pressure to distance themselves from us. And I think for President Putin, he needs to also balance, because there's too much asymmetry with China, and he has been saying if the trade with China is now 200 billion or more, with India it should be more than 50 billion, we should go for more. So they're always conscious of the fact that they should not become the weakest link in the chain in the Eurasian region. Yeah. So, but for us watching from here, can we be assured that Russia will remain an autonomous player and will continue to be strategically pivotal for us as it used to be in the past, or should we reassess the importance of Russia, given the fact that China is our number one adversary and Russia says that they are the closest with China now? So is there something for us at the level of policy, you think, where we should rethink whether we can rely on Russia going into the future, or are there any red lines to watch out for because of their tight embrace of China?
So in terms of policy, I think a lot of thinking has already been done in India with regards to this problem. And what we have been seeing is that India is not very keen on putting all its eggs in one basket. So while we are ideologically, a lot of foreign policy thinkers, and of course our government itself is, we usually talk about how close we have gotten with the United States. We have a very strong functioning relationship, and to a large part we're also trying to maintain steady ties, good military ties with the Russians. But at the same time, if you look at the Ukraine war again, because of the war, this is just an anecdotal thing to say, but the ammunition supply even for India has
been
gone
delayed,
down. And this is why India is pushing, and in a very strong way, it's almost an urgent matter for the forces to push for supply chains that do not rely so much on Russia. And
France is now almost equal. France is almost caught up with Russia now. Yeah.
Exactly. So because of, and this is just one of the examples. So putting all our eggs in one basket, relying so much on Russia is definitely not something that will happen again. As the days go by, we're basically walking past that era of that very strong relationship that India and Russia used to have, to a point that it was coming at the cost of India's relations with the rest of the world, or with the West. So at this point, we're really balancing our relationships, and I think Russia is also very aware of this happening. It knows that India is it is strategically balancing relationships, using the US as a counterweight. At the same time, it is not completely dropping all its relations with Russia. So these are things that Russia sees. And when it comes to the point you made, which was that Russia, do you think that we should totally depend on them? Definitely, I do not think that at this point depending on Russia is viable in the years ahead, simply because of how strong the relationship has gotten with China. That does not mean that the relationship is not going to remain on its feet. It should be as good as it is at this point. But definitely in terms, for example, if you look at any chance of a conflict between India and China, it would be very difficult for us to imagine that Russia would put all its weight behind India. So it would either sit completely out of the fight, or it might even lend a hand to the Chinese. And we've seen this with the delays of the S-400
the Akula,
systems.
and the Chakra 3, the Akula class submarines are delayed. So last word, Nishtha ji, for India, obviously we would like to sustain the Russia relationship for obvious reasons, and we would like Russia to remain strong, right? We don't want it to buckle under and become a vassal state of China. and to that extent we will continue to maintain our strategic partnership. But like Shubhangi was saying, we can't deny the fact that in the event of a major crisis, Russia may not stand up for us, because its stakes in China are much higher than its stakes in India, if you measure in terms of trade and the economic dependence. So how would you, from the Indian point of view, should we be alarmed when Xi Jinping and Putin are raising the toast and saying, you know, we are starting a new world order, or should we just sit out of this project and simply extract our benefits from Russia as we used to in the past? What is the Indian viewpoint on all this?
When you suggest that China may want to arm twist Russia to distance themselves from India, I don't think that's going to happen, because yes, we have had these border disputes and border skirmishes, but we have also to understand that we have had a large protracted period of absolutely no incidents between the two countries. You know, and we have to understand that the kind of border that we share with China, it is quite an unusual thing. That we are not allies, we are not regional allies in any way, but we do not really go to war with each other every 2 years. In fact,
we should avoid it, because it's just too costly. Yeah.
It is too costly for China, but it is disastrous for India. The way they have handled the escalation issue with China, I think it was a very pragmatic decision that the current government had.
And maybe even the Russians would appreciate that.
Maybe the Russians, absolutely, Russians would not only appreciate that. Maybe they were encouraging.
Yeah.
this kind
they wanted, Lavrov said, you know, we want our two great friends, China and India, to get along. So yeah, it's a complex triangle if you look at China, Russia, India. Viewers, I hope you got some sense of this. And of course, it's not just limited to India. The China-Russia partnership has ramifications for the global order as a whole. And if it's we are in a so-called bipolar era with China and the US as the two great powers, then the role of Russia and the role of India will be very, very pivotal in deciding this contest. So where we are positioned, and if our own view is that we are pushing for a multipolar world order where India and even Russia and many other power centers emerge around the world to balance out this bipolar situation of just China and the US. So it's an interesting configuration of forces out there, and surely Russia-China story is going to be continuous. We will be watching it very closely from India, because it has direct national security repercussions for us, but also we want to be bigger players on the world stage and create a multipolar world order, and there we have to be concerned if Russia is becoming a junior partner of China. So let me thank our two guests for sharing very, very thought-provoking insights. Thank you, Nishtha Gautam ji. Thank you, Shubhangi Sharma ji. Thank you for being on the show. And viewers, let me leave you with the thought that this is a pivotal relationship by all means, and even though China has the upper hand, we must understand the position, the viewpoints of both sides, why they are getting deeper and deeper entangled, and what does this mean for India and for the world. Do think about it. We have tried to provoke some thoughts in your mind and some questions in your mind, so think about them, and let's continue to brainstorm about the kind of world order that India wants, and where all these factors fall into place. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.